This is real talk for many people out there. Real talk. So we talk about things in the physical. And when I say physical, I tend to mean the science of it. Things you can see, touch, test, experiment, come to a conclusion, and pronounce as being true or false in this reality. And on the other side of that, there are things of the spirit that you can't see, can't touch, can't necessarily prove, but you feel them and you just know it's true. The intuitional knowledge that some of us have. If you look at what the blood does in you scientifically, you will come to know that there's a polarity of that. We live in a polarity universe. There's light and dark, up and down, good and bad, in and out, and so on and so on and so on. So if you can see the blood inside the body, there's an invisible component to the blood too that you can't see. And that's what Jesus was talking about when he said, for those of you who are ready, I will give you the hidden manna. So when we talk about the blood, and what the Spirit was reminding me the other day was basically saying, Robert, you spend so much time thinking about your physical bloodline, or you have in days past. You may not father a child in this lifetime. You're looking at the physical, and yet you serve an invisible God. So let me teach you about the invisible things of the blood. It has a purpose. My mother and my father came together and made my sister and me. It is true that that particular mix of blood will end if I do not biologically father children. That is true. Now, because I have another brother from my father who has a son, my father has other brothers who have children, who have had children, the blood line continues. So please let me be clear about what I'm saying. The specific part that I'm called to do in my lifetime, the Spirit was saying to me, you came to close a deal. You ever tried to open a jar and you can't get it, and you bang it on the counter and you still can't get it? And then, who's ever in the house near you say, can you open this jar for me? And they just pop it right off. So, you worked hard at it. You turned and struggled. You knocked the counter. You set it all up. And then somebody else came and popped the top right off. That's the closer. That's the person who came and closed the deal. So what the Spirit was telling me is that there have been a lot of people in this line who have done a lot of things and fulfilled their purposes in their lifetime. And your role is to close this off. Bam, that piece is done for the higher purpose that I've called you. So do not spend your life lamenting, not perpetuating your seed. To make it even more clear, I'm likening this to what I'm saying, to the role that many, many, many monks, MONKS, and nuns and sacred people throughout the human timeline who have dedicated and consecrated their lives for sacred purposes and have not procreated. Look at a lot of the holy people who never, Jesus, as I mentioned, who never bore children and yet who left incredible. That confirms that scripture that I just read. I'll give you a name that is better than that of sons and daughters. Some of us are called to a sacred space, and it does not include birthing children, bearing children, passing our seed along to children. And so while there may not be a lot of you out there for whom this conversation is relevant, I know, because I know what I'm called to, that there are some of you out there that this is hitting you right where you need to be hit today. There's a resonance with what I'm saying, because I know some of you, and I know that the lack of children in your lives does cause sometimes depression and grief and shame and isolation and loneliness. I know that to be true. I've been that way myself, and that partially explains why I've so vehemently and emphatically and passionately dedicated my life to the things that I know that I'm about. And at the same time, I have had to grieve that loss myself, and it's painful. It's painful if I stay in that space too long. I felt like I've disappointed my mom and I've disappointed my dad. My sister and I do not have children. She's 52, I'm 51. So my parents are not grandparents, and having to watch them grow older with all of their brothers and sisters and all the other aunts and uncles and cousins having grandchildren, and all the other people in the family their age having grandchildren, and they don't have them. That's hurts to watch that, because they're beautiful people and they deserve that, and probably grew up expecting that in their old age they would take care of their grandchildren. And so my sister and I have not given them that. So there's a sense of sadness with that, and a sense of disappointment with that somehow we didn't do what was expected. It's not coming from my parents. They're at peace. My mom talks about having gone through a period in her life where she did miss and mourn the presence of grandchildren, but she's evolved beyond that. So I'm not talking about any pressure that's coming from them. I'm talking about in the reality of my own soul. It has been painful. And that partially explains why I do spend so much time going for broke on what I know to be true for me in terms of things of the Spirit. So this is real talk for many people out there. Real talk. Beloved brother, your role is to close out what the mission was for this particular bloodline that you occupy. Just one practical example, and I've talked about this many times before, but just to nail it home, my father and his father, and I don't know about my great-grandfather because I didn't know him, but alcoholism has run and drug addiction has run in our family, and I've certainly experienced that in my lifetime. And I'm 7 years clean and sober. So that generational curse that ran through our bloodline has been broken in my generation. I have broken that. That is a small example of what the Spirit means when it says you came to close, complete the work of previous generations of this bloodline. That's a small example of that. That the work we do is work that, and my father and I talk about this often. Try as he might, he certainly has cut back. He's 82 years old on his drinking. And we talk about it, so I'm comfortable sharing it. He can't stop. He can't not drink. He's been able to cut back, but he can't stop for reasons that only his soul knows. And so there's a certain amount of pride that he takes in his son being able to do what he couldn't do and can't do. Small example, but hopefully that's more practical in terms of some of the real world applications of what the Spirit was telling me.
Find yourself to love from nobody. Find yourself to love.